My question is to the Minister of Health.
Order,
Does he stand
order.
by...
Can I say to all members, including the colleague of the member I'm called right beside her, please show some courtesy to the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
We had called for the member to do a legal translation for members down here, sir.
Order. That's not a point of order. The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
My question is to the Minister of Health. Does he stand by all his statements about health services?
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
Yes, including the statement that the Labour Party culled over 30,000 people off hospital waiting lists.
The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
What does he say to Dr Sandy Simpson, another frontline experienced mental health specialist who's heading overseas, who said on 9 to Noon yesterday, frontline mental health services are suffering. The reality this year is that the squeeze is horrible and the cost of providing services is not being met.
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, I would say two things. One is the government has increased the budget for mental health services by $85 million. And the second thing I would say is that under the previous government, back office bureaucracy grew from 8,000 managers and administrators in district health boards to over 10,500 managers and administrators. Our cap is working and we are employing more nurses and other personnel than previously.
The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Which is correct. The statements made by Marion Blake, Chief Executive of NGO Platform, who said that they were facing a funding cut in Wellington alone of $2 million in mental health services, or his reported comments that, quote, planned changes in frontline services should not threaten NGO services.
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
Well, Mr Speaker, I am aware that Capital and Coast, in preparing its annual plan, is looking at how it can address the fact that the last government left it delivering over $60 million in unfunded services. Despite the fact that this government increased overall funding for Capital Coast by more than $32 million this year and will give it more next year, changes will have to be made.
Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister of Health. What reports has he seen in relation to delivering better health services?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, the House will appreciate that in order for our 21 district health boards to have security and certainty in their services, DHBs need to be on a solid financial footing. Members will also recall that the new government inherited a DHB sector on track to a financial crisis with unfunded services assessed at $155 million and forecast to grow to over $200 million. I'm pleased to say that as a result of the government putting in a record $536 million this year into DHBs, and the DHBs looking carefully at their plans, the health service is turning around that track to financial crisis and is expected to have a significant improvement in the amount of unfunded services this next financial year.
The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
When he said at the Sprott House event last week, our government is committed to supporting our elderly to stay in their homes as long as they can, was it better and more convenient for him to forget about the hundreds of elderly people in Otago and Southland who have had their home help cut?
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, I think what's opposite to that comment is to refer to a recent report in the Grey Powers lobby report when they met the member opposite. They reported the opposition health spokesman in relation to health care saying she is totally against assessing by telephone and has stated that the only way to assess a person is to visit them in their homes to see firsthand how they are coping. That's what she said about Otago Southland. Well, what is interesting is that it was in fact Mrs Dyson's government that formalised telephone assessments as a pilot in 2006. And further, it was Mrs Dyson's government that voted public money to roll out nationally that project in the 2008 budget.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Isn't it a bit rich for him to continue to describe his cuts as changes when Dr Simpson, who has had over 20 years of mental health advocacy, said the current cuts are frankly worrying? They cannot continue to deliver the services at the size that they are at the moment. There will be further cuts.
Honourable Tony Ryle.
No.
Question number 5, David Bennett.
Mr. Speaker, my question is